Start on this picture that I've now drawn out, this photograph of the horse in the surf. A little bit of adjustment to do around the horse yet. We'll do one oil painting in acrylic, that's this one, and then I'm going to do another one in the series using watercolour and different techniques with that for fun. I've picked up quite a nice second-hand frame recently, which I put a mount within. So the two ways of working a similar subject but with different mediums. First of all, I'm going to put some filler on and make some texturing just along the wave areas here, just to give a bit more feeling of perhaps heavy oil paint to it. And to mix that, all I should do is just get a bowl and make up some ordinary polyfiller and a little bit of PVA glue with that to make it more plastic, a small amount of water, and put it on with a painting knife. Now then, on mixing, you just going to need all of this filler that's left in the box here, and you won't need that much glue in that. A couple of dollars of it will be fine. Just a nice blob like that, just to make it plastic enough that it won't come away from the canvas. Too much and it'll be too sticky and never dry. Too little and it makes no difference at all. And then add just a bit of water to that. Just get the water going carefully, not too much. We mix in the glue and a little bit of water at a time because you don't want it too liquid. Gradually mix it up. And with the glue as well, it's surprising how quickly it turns into a liquid. You want it like a thin paste. There we go. That sort of consistency. It'll take about 2 to 3 hours normally to set, depending on the type of filler you're using. This gives you plenty of time to work it all up. And I should put that on with both the spatula, the painting knives and a brush to get the effect, the underpainting effect, the under-textural effect for these waves. Now I'm going to use a painting knife of this shape, because I quite like these because they're so versatile. Now what I want to build up is the waves all the way along here. Just pile it on, and it just drops back into the sea behind. So it'll look as if, when we painted it, it'll look as if we built this up with the paint. Of course we won't have done, but it'll look like it and make it very effective. It's something that Monet used to do as well. With his paintings, he used to build it up with the texture first very often. Not always, but... And down here, the same. We've got... We need to start picking up on the texture of the thing as it comes over. And now I just need to give the texturing of the surface of the waves and current here. And even the sky will layer up a bit. Use the rest of this filler to give a texture and movement to it. I think we'll just build up the horse just a little bit. Too much, just enough to... Alright, well that should give us the effects we need now for the sky. Now I want to start working out the base colours, and I want to start with the purple first, working right through the background so the sky goes over the purple later. I'll still be able to see my drawing because of the textures. Then I shall work up some browns and some darks, really dark browns underneath the waves here, through to these lighter browns, and then gradually I'll work up the colours over the top of that properly afterwards. So first of all we'll start with this purple and literally cover the whole painting in it, which might seem a strange thing to do, but it'll be a lovely colour to work on. Right down all the way over everything, and get it right into these little white spaces. Don't leave any bits of white showing, that's very important. So this is my undercoat which I want to glow through. Really nice vibrant painting. And really do make sure you work up into these little cracks of white, little spots and dots and dashes, because if you don't they'll show awfully later. For this job I've used an intermediate brush. It's a nylon filbert, about ½ an inch. You don't want to be too soft or the brush will be ruined by working on this texture, but if it's too stiff it's also difficult to get it into those little cracks and crevices, so something in between. In fact, it's one of the brushes of the same sort of stiffnesses that I would normally use for painting with any random acrylic like this. So you've covered it nice and evenly with a thin coat over it again. We're going to need this glowing through, but we don't want light patches. Right, well, there we are, we've got our base coat on, and because the acrylic dries so quickly I'll be able to work the next coat of black and a bit of brown on pretty quickly over this, and then we'll gradually work up succeeding colours. Now we're able to paint oils over acrylics, but remember we can't paint acrylics over oils. So if I build up all of these undercoats, want to glow through in acrylics first, I can then go back to finishing the painting in more detail if I wish with the oils. That gives us rather a nice colour to glow through. Now at this stage, make sure, look at various angles, make sure you haven't missed any little bits of white, so that when you've really got to check it, it's easy to miss them, and little bits I've missed there underneath. Right, using the same brush, now it's time to start working through from my very dark browns and purples into sort of a more bluey dark. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of Prussian blue and the burnt sienna, and just work along this edge here, giving this slightly warmer tint, working into a slightly deeper blue underneath that wave edge. Go quite dark along that wave edge there, coming into this Prussian blue hue. Going to go back over that with lighter colour later, but we just want this purple glowing through all of this as we go along as well. So here we go with the Prussian blue and a little bit of the burnt sienna, just working this darking so I can let that purple glow through later, and we'll put the much lighter colours on. Put a little bit of brown, except we're just streaking in a bit of the brown into it. Dark all the way along there, and it's actually quite dark all the way along the sea here as well, so I'm going to put that in. That horse certainly is, so I'll paint the whole horse in. I'm going to go darker with that later still. All the way along here with that wave comes, come down to the sky to that later. I'm going to put some cerulean and much lighter blues going on down into there later. I just want to get these darks in at first. See that purple is just glowing through. A little bit warmer, we're just touching a touch of the black into it. Same up here, a little bit of black going in up behind the waves here. Certainly again on the horse. And then we can start to work some of these colours through here. So now we're taking that vivid purple down, letting the darks show through, because I want the darks glowing underneath the much lighter highlighting I'm going to do later on the foam surfaces, and I want these dark shadows underneath. So I've got to work right into these textures now to make sure I get those dark shadows showing later. Push right into the tip of the brush to get into those textures. Now back to my brown, and this is where I'm going to start adding the brown over the surface and working it in so that the brown starts to show us the sand glowing in between these bits of foam. So burnt sienna now, just working it in over, gently over the surfaces, blending these colours in to get the underpainting. Not it too strong, just glowing. Purple and the brown, because the purple is reflecting the blue from the sky onto the sand, which is the brown sand, and the blue sky is giving it that purple tinge. Develop these techniques as we go along. This whole technique of using this texture in this way is one that I've developed, and you don't just use it the same way all the time. So that's given us the glow of that sand through the slightly discoloured water. Keep building it up until we're happy with the strength of colour we've got there. Don't want to be too bright. These colours will sink a little bit when they dry anyway. Okay, we'll let that dry off now. Right, now it's time to start working over the blue for the sky. And again I'm going to underpaint first of all. Get a smooth colour, not let the purple show through this one. So although we've got some texture in, I'm not letting that texture work in this instance for the sky. Put it on nice and thickly. And that was a cobalt blue. I want to come back and go into a cerulean all the way along here. Lovely light cerulean blue coming up into the sky. And I'm going to blend it up and in. Get this slightly more green blue going on. And when that's dry, I'm going to go over with the slightly pinker, greyer colour. This is just to get the feeling of this lovely, can't say summer, but summertime sky. Just crisscross of strokes here to try and get the feeling of the space of this sky. And this distant clouds, atmosphere way up above here. I should paint over this with a slightly pinker colour later. I just want to get this coat of paint on for the moment. With finer brushes later, but just for the moment, let's get this canvas covered. Get these basic glowing colours in. And while we're on that blue, we can now just start to bring it into the surface of this. And you just start to see how we can get this lovely effect of the sea reflecting off the surfaces. A bit of water now and start blending it in. I'll come back into this and put a work into it as well. Now we need to work out the pinks of these sky. Should be just dry enough now to work on. Take a little bit of rose now. A little touch of raw sienna. Just blending it down and in, tickling them in with my brush. Gradually building them up. Feel the warmth of these clouds just coming out. Spreading out across the sky there. Try and get these subtleties of the sky here. Down the bottom there, it gets a little mauve, just a little grey mauve. So I'm going to take some of that deep blue we used earlier with a little of the rose. Lighten it up just a fraction. Let's see if we can start to get that slightly purple. So a little more white in it. Don't do it too dark, that would be too white now. Yeah. This balance in between of cobalt blue and a little bit of rose, make that slightly greyer, somewhere there. Just feather up into those little clouds. You'll feel a darker shade underneath some of them. Giving that lovely glow to the sky, these soft, subtle greys. A little more of the cerulean into that colour. We'll just go back and drop a little bit of that light blue back in. Right, now we need to make it a little bit yellower, so we'll take the raw sienna and the white, not far off the same colour, just tint it slightly with a little bit of the pink, just a very slight tint, catching the top surfaces of these. It's a textural paint now, just a fraction. I'll go back and clean the brush, dry it off a bit, and go back and just soften these back into the sky. They're just a bit too much. Right, now we're on to the final stages of it in a way. We've got to start putting on the lighter areas for the foam here that's going across the surface of the water. So I'm going to use white and add into it a little touch of light blue. Remember, always start with your lighter colour and add the darker into it. Don't start with the colour and then add the white, otherwise you'll be all over the place. Gallons of the stuff. And I've got to see now just how light I've got to go. That's a bit too light actually. I want to be using some of that coming into the very surf here. So this is white with a little tiny touch of cerulean. I may not even need the oil paint for this painting actually. The way it's going, I may be able to build the whole thing up with acrylics. So there we are, this is a very light blue going on. And we're just going to start feeling the bits of foam coming back from that. This is slightly transparent, not a lot, just a little bit transparent. I'm using a filbert, but a small one. You see here, so just over about a quarter inch. I'm using just the edge of that filbert to build up these patterns of foam on the top. And they're only relating to what I'm painting here. I'm not copying, I'm not actually copying it as a photograph, remember, I'm just making an impression and making marks that are similar and about what's on here. So I just come back into this with a little bit of the darker snakes later, snaky foams. It'll make more sense quite clearly when I've done a lot more, and the other colours are on here as well. This is only the very beginning, remember. Acrylic's trying to dry off on me, so it's not easy to keep it going. I've got a little bit of pink to my light blue now, especially down here with the foreground parts where it's slightly warmer. Keep it thin because I'm just putting glazes on. Let the colour show through, almost as if these were actually really little bubbles. At the moment there doesn't seem to be any other way but to gradually work this up. As it sinks in we'll go lighter and lighter. Put more of this foam back on the surface. Still building these little wave crests. Bits of foam that are coming in at the edge of the wave with very, very light blue at the moment before adding on much stronger colour. Hopefully you can see how I'm gradually building up the shininess of reflections across these little bits of foam and water. And it's getting lighter and lighter. Right, now I need to go back into the darks a little bit, just underneath these bits of foam, and just pick out the shapes of it, as if there was a shadow going on around them, just cast by the foam itself to the base. It should give it a sort of three-dimensional effect. So again, I want to be a little bit thicker with my paint now because I'm going a bit darker. And going underneath these with this Prussian black. And these will sink back a bit more when I start to put the very lights in on the waves. There's some lovely blues going on. I've got to try and find those next warmth of these Cobalt and ultramarine blues against the other blues, which will help the colours a lot. As you can see by that one, the colour I put on, it makes such a difference. Now we'll take some of the Cobalt and just add some of that in on the lighter side here. Down the leg a bit. Now a little bit of cadmium orange, in this case yellow orange. It's still, I find these acrylics very slimy compared to oil paint, so I'm not all that keen, but it will make a difference. And I want to make that just a fraction warmer, so I'm going to add a little bit of cadmium red to it. Around here. And get the stuff to behave. Try and do this painting with acrylics only if I can. Touch across the top of the cap there, I think. Maybe a little bit of light over there might help it. Surprising, it's not always the mark you think is wrong that is. It can be something next to it. So if I make that a little bit lighter, in fact, just over the top of the head, it might just do the job. Yeah, like that, you see. Just bring it out a fraction. Now it's time to start on the final course of this, where we're going to start putting in the whites of the waves. I've done the light blues already. Now I'm going to make a very light golden yellow by using yellow ochre, or even raw sienna. It doesn't matter which you use really. It does matter in watercolour more because the raw sienna is more transparent than yellow ochre, but in this case not quite so important. It too strong. And we'll take the red and the gold, a bit of cadmium red with the gold. We can just start to warm up the water in places at the edges like this to give that a bit more sparkle to the cools. We're playing rough against smooth, light against dark, warm against cool again. We're playing the opposites against each other slightly. We can go to a lighter cream yet. So white always to start off with, remember. A little touch of the chrome yellow now. And we'll just start to really make some of these very light sparkles in the water. And you see the thing suddenly now will come to life. You get these light other colours on to make the cool seem cooler and the warm seem warmer. Everything has to balance one to another. And you'd think it would be a white this, but actually it is just off cerulean blue with a white with a little touch of cerulean blue in it. And let's work on the verticals as well as the horizontals, because we won't get the feeling of reflections without that we do the depth of the reflection first, and then we can pull across a bit afterwards. a little violet with the burnt sienna, just to give a bit more warmth to the sand. It's still catching the sunlight. And we'll just add a little bit of yellow to the yellow ochre just to give it a little bit more sunlight in this foreground here. So we're on the closing stages. All I'm doing now is just putting back in some of the darks that we lost earlier, these shadows. What I've done there is to bring or cool to that bit so that it brings this bit forward. And I think, for me, I'm about done, you know. I don't want to do too much more. A little bit of blue reflection here and there, but not much, just to play against the walls. I think that painting is be overworked if I do too much more. So I think we're calling it a day at that. Well, I've now fitted the picture just into the frame temporarily, and I think, as you can see, this is an example of a frame overpowering the painting. It needs to be tinted down a bit, so I'm going to give it some colour washes now just to take this down and link with the colours in the painting. Some grey blues, just to soften it, and we'll see where we go from there. Prepared here is a little white, burnt sienna and some Prussian blue to make ourselves a grey. We can run quite thinly, so we'll start with a bit of white and add some of the Prussian blue, which I think will do the job, and then brown it down just a bit, grey it down just a bit with a little bit of the sienna. It's already got some of that colour in it to a degree. Wash that right over the whole thing, so plenty of water. And let's give it a blue-grey wash. Take down this glitz and also link it to the cool colours in the painting. Just a little bit more, it's just a bit too warm, this frame. There we are, and what happens then is that the wet paint will sink into all of these recesses, well into it all, because it's the recesses that we actually want to cover as much as any surface. And then we can wipe it down a bit and let the gilt show through. And this is the frame that I picked up with the canvas and a print on it for a mere £20 from a car boot sale. So you can get bargains, but you might have to work them just a little bit to get them to look good again. It's quite a nice frame. You pay, £80–90 for a frame like this from a proper store. Really brush it in well. Make sure every surface has been covered, and then it can resist afterwards, that's no problem. We'll just take some tissue and take it back a bit. I want to go around the outside first and just make sure that's... I want to leave this grey in the recesses, like that. Now we'll let that dry and we'll see how that does. Right, having done that first coat of the blue-grey, I've decided that it needs a lot more blue to really bring out the blues in the painting. I need it a lot more lively. It's rather dead at the minute. That grey was alright for a softer landscape, but it wants something a bit stronger, so I'm going to add in quite a bit more blue into the surfaces and crevices, which will mix in with that already dried grey. This won't be as bright blue when it dries, it'll go a slightly greyer colour because it'll link in with the existing grey I've already done. And this custom doing the frame to suit the picture, very useful, and that will hopefully sink back I need to be much more cheerful painting. Well, I've now given it a wash of pink over that blue, and that hopefully will give us the linkage to all the colours we need on the painting.
Here we are with the completed work.